What's up, y'all? Welcome to Convo Blueprint with Zion, and we're back with another episode. Today, I wanted to share a little bit about Jane Elliott. She's could be classified as an anti-racist, and she had some comments recently. She's most known for her brown eye, blue eye experiment when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. I think she's from Kansas or Arkansas, and she was trying to bring home the idea of racism and, you know, teach people in the Midwest, like, what does racism look like? So she had this experiment that she conducted. It was a little bit controversial, but if you haven't checked it out, you should check out the brown eye, blue eye experiment by Miss Jane Elliott. And we're gonna get right into it. You know how I don't like to waste your time. And before I get started, I want to say thank you to the new subscribers. I think it's about 10 of y'all. And thank you to the new viewers. We're up over a few thousand in just a short period of time. And I think I've uploaded maybe this is the fifth Convo Blueprint. Please check out the old episodes. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for your viewership, and thank you for your support. And we're going to get right into it. Okay. So I always start off with a word of meditation. This was my thoughts for today. The moral benefits of wisdom. My son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you. Oh, I'm sorry. This is Proverbs chapter 2. Turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding. Indeed, if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as for silver and search for it as for hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He holds success in store for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk is blameless. For he guards the course of the just and protects the way of his faithful ones. Then you will understand what is right and just and fair, every good path. For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will protect you, and understanding will guard you. Wisdom will save you from the ways of wicked men, from men whose words are perverse, who have left the straight paths to walk in dark ways, who delight in wrongdoing and rejoice in the perverseness of evil, whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. Wisdom will save you also from the adulterous woman, from the wayward woman with her seductive words, who has left the partner of her youth and ignored the covenant she made before the Most High. Surely her house leads down to death, and her paths to the spirits of the dead. None who go to her return or attain the paths of life. Thus, you will walk in the ways of the good and keep to the paths of the righteous. For the upright will live in the land, and the blameless will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the unfaithful will be torn from it. That's a whole lot right there. A lot on the wisdom that comes from the Most High, obeying his commandments and knowing him. And that's the meditation for today. Before I get into Jane Elliott, happy 4th of July for those who celebrate it. And I understand for those who don't. Let me get my camera action right. Okay, that's much better. I wanted to highlight, like, I'm praying that everyone be safe. My prayers go out to the families who, and the people who experienced this and those who experienced loss. For those of you who haven't seen the story, I want to go ahead and show it. It's interesting, too, that this happened in an affluent, as they would say, part of Chicago. So let's go ahead and see what MSNBC is reporting.
Another mass shooting in America, this time at a July 4th parade in Highland Park, which is a suburb just north of Chicago. Police telling us at least 6 people are confirmed dead. More than 24 have been taken to area hospitals. Right now, the gunman is still at large. They're looking for somebody to be between the ages of 18 to 20 years old, a white male, small build, wearing a blue T-shirt. They say they have recovered a rifle. And maybe most chilling of all, police saying that this person, this shooter, took up a sniper position above a roof, firing on the people at the parade. I want to get right to Rahima Elliott. She's been following all the news out of Chicago for us. Rahima, what more can you tell us?
I think that what you just mentioned, Tom, is so important for people to know that there was a thought early on that this shooter may have been on the ground with those who were participating in the parade. And what we just heard now is brand new information coming from police that this shooter was coming, the shots were fired from an elevated position. So this person had a chance to just shoot down into the crowd. The other information that was updated that from what we learned earlier about the number of people who were injured, 6 people dead. He said 24 others were seriously injured. What he did not tell us yet, however, we do not know, is the ages of those who are dead and injured. That information is yet to come. But this is very important information about this shooter whom they are looking for. And authorities say that they have created a perimeter around the parade.
Isn't it crazy? It is starting to feel like, it's better to avoid larger gatherings. Not that we should live in fear, but it seems like these large gatherings are places where people who want to do major damage, people who want to kill, are showing up. And, you know, and these are the events that we're seeing. And I feel like this was prophesied in Matthew. We're seeing literally the love of many shall wax cold. It says, because iniquity abounds, or because lawlessness abounds, right? From the highest levels of government to the citizen level, lawlessness, where the law doesn't apply to specific people depending on how much money you have or how well connected you are. And so since lawlessness is abounding, the love of many is waxing cold. And then poverty, and poverty's connection with crime, and these things just keep going and going. And the saddest part is we don't see very many of our elected officials. We don't see much being done about these issues. And I'm not necessarily just talking about gun control, but I mean about poverty, because crime and poverty go hand in hand. In LA, I don't know if you've seen, but people are following rich folks home and robbing them. It's unaffordable. Is that a word? People are having a hard time affording the basic necessities of living. So it's not an excuse for these things to happen, but it is a reason that should be addressed. Let me know what you think.
Area. In addition, because they say this is still an active situation, they're telling people in the community that they should shelter in place. Initially, the report from authorities when the shots rang out, they wanted people to disperse. There were hundreds of people who were attending this 4th of July parade. The shots rang out. Authorities encouraged people to disperse. Now they're telling them, those in the homes, that they should shelter in place as this manhunt now is underway for the person who shot into this 4th of July crowd. Tom?
Yeah, that's right, Rahima. Police saying that SWAT teams are going door to door. And you mentioned it was a 4th of July parade. We don't know anything about the victims yet. Those victims who were killed, at least 6 of them. But you were right. This is a 4th of July parade. Likely a lot of families out there. From initial reports, early reports, the shooting apparently started right after the parade kicked off, 10 minutes into this parade. And you can just imagine the amount of families that were out there, just like July 4th parades all across this country. Little children, families, everyone there excited to celebrate, of course, July 4th, such an important national holiday in this country. And yet
it just makes me think that whatever we're going to do, wherever we're going to go, that we should be praying for the people who are believers, right? And if you're not, just being very aware of your surroundings. And I just feel personally and prophetically, it's not a time to just be doing things all willy-nilly, as as the saying goes, but to do things that have purpose. And maybe, these people, 6 people, went out just to enjoy the festivities of celebrating in their way Independence Day, and they're no longer here. And it's very sad where we are in the country, and how there doesn't seem to be a turning of the actuality of realizing the value of human life. Even though they just overturned Roe v. Wade, you know, like where's the value for the born, the people who are already alive?
Some person, some deranged person, again, thinking this would be a prime target to take people out, and that person is still at large. Rahima, do we know the police presence as far as the dragnet to capture this person? Does it extend outside of Highland Park? Do we even know that? Or do they think this shooter is still somewhere around that area?
I cannot confirm that at all at this point, Tom. We do know that there are multiple police and law enforcement agencies involved in this manhunt at this moment. There are, I should say, probably you should say that this is all hands on deck, if you will, as they're looking for the shooter, because this is a holiday. People are out. They weren't just at this parade, mind you. People must have been at parks and they're in their backyards for barbecues. You pointed out this happened in the morning. It was only 10 minutes, people are saying, after the parade began early this morning. And so people were out and about attempting to enjoy this 4th of July holiday. And now law enforcement is out and about trying to find the person who created this mayhem.
Police have recovered a weapon. They say it's a rifle, but they are saying this person could still be armed and dangerous. To consider this person, the shooter, armed and dangerous, they're asking people shelter in place right now, Rahima, and essentially a sort of, they don't want to scare people, but they don't want people to be outside there in the public in Highland Park, because at this point, they don't know really what they're dealing with.
Absolutely. And what they do know is that they're dealing with someone who has deadly intentions and has carried them out. So
how are y'all feeling? Are you feeling safe when you leave your house? Or what is it like for you when it comes to family events or concerts or anything like that? Do you feel safe going to these things? Let me know in the comments, and let me know how these type of things have an effect on your personal life, if they do at all.
knowing that that is what's in front of them, they want the streets to be as clear as possible of people who could end up in harm's way because of this person who is still at large. There were people who ran for safety when these shots rang out. As you point out, this is a gathering of families coming together. So when they ran, they left behind the lawn chairs, they left behind blankets, they left behind some of the food and that they might have had, and some of the things that their children might have been carrying to this parade. Little children always carry some blanket or a toy or a stuffed animal with them. All of those things left behind as people ran for their lives.
And you think about this, Rahima, you know, a July 4th parade, there are always fireworks, right? You are always going to hear sort of that crackling of sound. You're not sure what it is, even though we live in this day and age in this country right now where these mass shootings seem to be happening every single week. We're just coming off Buffalo. We're just coming off Uvalde. It seems anywhere Americans go these days,
it is insane, the amount of mass shooter events, the mass shootings that have happened in America. More days, I mean, more mass shootings, almost double, I want to say, compared to the amount of days that have passed in the year already. This is a big problem.
It can't feel safe at this point, right?
And there's one more. Before I get into it, there was one more video I wanted to look at. Somebody recorded this from their apartment.
I want to go now to Isa Gutierrez, who is live for us with some new video, I understand, that is just coming into us. Isa, what do we have?
Hey, that's right, Hallie. We just got this video that was taken from an apartment building right by where this happened. This man posting it on Facebook and also sending it to officials. I think you're going to be able to take a look at it here in a minute. This is, again, taken from inside this person's apartment that was on the street of the parade. He was watching the parade, just taking a video, of everything going on. And then suddenly you hear those gunshots. You can tell that, what we've been saying this whole time. At first, those on the street, as well as the person taking the video themselves, didn't realize what really was going on until a few moments later, where you see people ducking, diving onto the sidewalk, screams as well. You see him start to shake, and then he wrote in his Facebook post that he then goes downstairs to try and go outside and grab his family that was outside. Take a listen.
So it seems like he just the shooter just opened fire, and just started spraying the crowd.
Now, we saw in the Facebook post, the person who posted this video, again, saying that they were in their apartment, just taking a video of the parade when they witnessed this. They then went downstairs to try and get their family back inside. They said that there were already, by the time he got downstairs, 20 people locked, behind closed doors inside, trying to get to safety. I want to talk a little bit again about what we just heard in the last hour, Hallie, hearing from the first time today from the coroner's office, them saying that they have identified the 5 people who died at the scene, all 5 of them adults. Officials are currently working on notifying their family members before they release any further information. They also said that one other person died at the hospital as well of their injuries. Another 23 people transported from the scene to 3 nearby hospitals, many of them serious or critically injured, one of them a child. Officials described their injuries as gunshot wounds to various parts of their bodies, including the abdomen and the limbs. These were very serious injuries. We're going to hear hopefully very soon from the hospitals some updates on these victims. You heard also from a doctor on scene who spoke to our affiliate there. He stayed back. His family, his grandson, ran away to safety. His instinct was to stay there on scene on ground zero. He says that there was blood everywhere, that these injuries looked like.
It does make me think if wherever you go in the public, and especially if you're with your family or even your friends or even yourself, it does feel like you should always be aware and have an exit plan in case something were to go down. And it may seem crazy to have to live this way, but this is our reality now, just to be able to understand like how many exits are there, how if a mass shooter ran up in the place that you were in, what would you do? I think we need to be prepared for these things. And for the believers who pray, asking the Most High to keep you from hurt, harm, or danger, and to show you what you need to see before it even happens, to let you know, okay, maybe that's not the route you want to take, and maybe you don't want to go to the Walmart down the street. Maybe it's not a good day to do that. Maybe you need to go to the Target instead,
like war injuries. We heard from officials saying that they quickly applied tourniquets. Of course, there was a large, heavy law enforcement presence on scene when this happened. So tourniquets were applied. They tried to control the bleeding as quickly as possible, but just a horrific scene. And I have to say, Hallie, I went to school very close by in Evanston. Many of my friends from college are from Highland Park, and they describe their town how we've heard it described today. It's a small, sleepy town. They never expected this would happen there, but of course, no one ever does. We hear that over and over when these tragedies happen. Hallie?
Isa Gutierrez, stay close to your camera. Isa, thank you so much for those updates.
Okay, so prayers to the victims, to the families, and to the people who experienced such an atrocious act. And I pray that they quickly apprehend the suspect and that they find the person who did it so they can be brought to justice. And so the topic of this video, what I wanted to talk about is Jane Elliott, a longtime anti-racist, and she had like an interesting take on. So right here, Jane Elliott explains why Republicans are pushing voter suppression and anti-abortion laws. This is from September 5th, 2021. Do y'all find it interesting that when the Supreme Court nominees, Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, Justice Kavanaugh, I guess I want to be respectful. Have you noticed that they basically all lied when they were asked questions about Roe v. Wade and overturning it? Do y'all remember that? So let's go in there. Let's dig into it a little bit deeper. This article is written by Robert Bush. Wow, look, 159,000 views. So it says, is there a connection between the pro-life movement and racism? I'll make it a little bigger for y'all. Okay, there we go. I don't know. Do you think it is? Starting off, do you think there is a connection? I guess we're going to find out. As a European man, it surprises me how American society somehow insists on vilifying women who decide to get an abortion. How is that even possible in the land of the free? Good question. I think every woman should be able to decide with her body what to do with her body. End of story. There's not much to discuss in my opinion, but of course, I didn't start writing this article just to make this statement. I want to share the wise words of Jane Elliott with you. That's why I'm doing this video, is to share the wise words of Jane Elliott with you. He says, a few years ago, she perfectly explained why Republicans are obsessed with border control and pro-life. It's about racism. Elliott's explanation makes perfect sense and gives us an idea of what drives Republican policies these days. She refers to a book written by Ben J. Wattenberg called The Birth Dearth: What Happens When People in Free Countries Don't Have Enough Babies. Let me know in the comments, have y'all ever heard of The Birth Dearth? Wattenberg wrote this book almost 30 years ago. He explained that white people could become a minority in the United States within a few decades. I don't see a problem with that for several reasons, but Republicans tend to have a different opinion on that and take this book as a warning. Many Western societies have much lower reproduction rates than third world countries, and the pandemic amplified this trend. When we look at this on a domestic level, it looks pretty similar. White people don't have as many babies as Blacks, Asians, and Hispanics. And that's where Republicans get scared. What happens if Texas, Florida, and other southern states turn Democrat in the near future? It's the nightmare of the GOP. Republicans are panicking and try to find ways to stop this. They come up with the big lie and claim that Trump actually won the election. They tried to push laws that make it harder for people of color to vote. And now they are pushing anti-abortion laws. Okay, so this was a year ago, before the SCOTUS overturn of Roe v. Wade. But this is not about pro-life or religious beliefs. This is about straight up racism. Why is that? Ask yourself, who's more likely to have an abortion? And that's where Republican lawmakers see their chance. They don't want white women to have abortions. It's as simple as that. Republican maths are based on the fact that 60% of all abortions happen in white families, and they want to change that. The current pro-life movement is mainly driven by folks who believe that white people need to save themselves from becoming a minority. It's the same folks who push gerrymandering that are pro-life activists now. He says, it blows my mind that Republicans are basically pushing an agenda to force white teenagers to have babies and hope that these babies will be wearing MAGA hats one day. Voter suppression and anti-abortion laws are desperate attempts of Republicans defending the status of white folks in the United States. But what if we could just drop that narrative and stay away from racism? What if? I totally agree that white people will be outnumbered in Western societies pretty soon, but I believe that that's a good thing and not a problem. Same. I don't see a future for the Republican Party as it is right now, but is that really a bad thing? Sounds pretty radical, but it's not, and here's why. What does being white even mean? What does being Black even mean? Thank you. Aren't we all humans? Yes, I believe there's one human race. There's one race, the human race. Let's say society continues to reproduce as it does right now, and in 2 generations, there are only mixed folks. Wouldn't that be a good thing? In 2020, about 10% of all Americans identified as multiracial. Hispanics are dating Blacks, whites are dating Asians, and fewer folks seem to care about race when dating. Again, isn't that a good thing? If this trend continues, we might see more than half of Americans identify as multiracial within the next 2 generations. In Germany, we are already at almost 25%, the numbers rising quickly. I am one of those mixed folks. My mom is Bulgarian. My fiance is American, but with Irish Italian heritage. If we have a kid one day and that child falls in love with a Black Asian person, how could that person become a racist? It's impossible. The most secure way to abolish racism forever is to stop thinking about race or national identity. I agree. Think about the things that we agree on more. Think about the commonalities between humanity, and we'll get a lot further than we are politically. We'll be a lot less polarizing, and we won't need such things as critical race theory, which don't look at groups of people. However, institutions, policies, laws, regulations that disenfranchise particular groups of people. It does not separate people into two groups as far as oppressed and oppressors, like many GOPers or Republicans or people who are not educated on critical race theory actually think. Instead of desperately trying to defend the status quo of white America, the Republican Party could start to focus on how to attract voters of all ethnicities and stop telling women what to do with their bodies. I agree. The MAGA movement and other right-wing agitators are signs of how desperate white supremacists have become. If you really love your country and call yourself a patriot, please ask yourself what liberty and freedom for all really means. If you have the best intentions to make America great again, then I would like to know, what is it that makes America great in the first place? The coolest thing about the United States of America, in my opinion, is that there is no ethnicity called American. A white person in America is already a mix of Italians, Irish, Germans, and other European nationalities. As a European, I love looking at American culture as a mashup of several European roots. And the next logical step is taking this to the next level. If there's one country on this planet that has the capacity of leading the free world, it is the United States of America. If there's one country that has citizens with roots on all continents of this planet, it's the United States of America. If there's one country that could teach us, I feel like this is like the climax of the speech, right? If there's one country that could teach us how to overcome racism forever, it is the United States of America. Dear Republicans, please stop these desperate attempts of voter suppression and forcing teenagers to have unwanted babies who might become MAGA supporters one day. Okay, let's check out these two clips right here from Jane Elliott.
And right now, white people are really frightened. If you don't understand the destruction of Planned Parenthood offices, and you don't understand the wall that we're going to build on the southern border of the United States, you haven't read the book, The Birth Dearth by Ben Wattenberg. Ben Wattenberg was a brilliant Jewish man who was a member of the American Enterprise Institute. And he wrote a book, the first paragraph of which says, "The main problem confronting the United States today is there aren't enough white babies being born in this country." He was an advisor to presidents of the United States. He wrote the book in 1987. He says if we don't change this and change it rapidly, white people will lose their numerical majority in this country, and this will no longer be.
Do you think this type of idea and people who agree with this type of idea, do you think they view America as a white supremacist nation? If all of the attention or focus is surrounding white people having babies and maintaining their economic power, their economic influence, and their position in society, wouldn't that inherently, or would it inherently make America a white supremacist country? What do you think? Let me know in the comments.
Be a white man's land. Now, I'm not misrepresenting this. I'm telling you almost exactly what he says. He says there are three things we can do to solve this. Number one, we could pay women to have babies, as they have been doing in Western European nations for years. Then he says, and these are his words, not mine, unfortunately, we would have to pay women of all colors to have babies, so we don't want to do that. He says the second thing we could do is increase the number of legal immigrants that are allowed into this country every year. Then once again, he says, unfortunately, the vast majority of those wanting to come to this country today are people of color, so we don't want to do that. The third thing he says, and women had better pay attention to this.
It is interesting too, like when we have the conversation about immigration, more people come from Europe and Canada, white people who would be classified as European or white, come and just stay over their visa. So they come legally into the country and just stay. But notice whenever we have the conversation in a political realm, it's always about, it always seems to be about Hispanics, people coming from Venezuela or Mexico. Do y'all find that interesting?
60% of the fetuses that are aborted every year are white. If we could keep that 60% alive, that would solve our birth dearth. Does that sound like racism to you?
Can you talk a little bit about the trauma associated with
The trauma associated with it?
Yeah.
One of the main traumas is it tells white people that they are superior because of the lack of melanin in their skin. And then they find out suddenly that we've got a black president. That's traumatic. That's where the trauma is. Living a lie, finding out the truth is traumatic. Finding out now recently that within 30 years, white people will be in the numerical minority in this country is going to be traumatic.
If who's ever watching right now, let me know what you think. Do you feel some type of way? Because so this kind of, I think, brings it home. The idea of the birth dearth has really been rebranded by Tucker Carlson and Fox News as far as like the replacement theory. Right. Lori Ingram said that these are demographic changes that we didn't vote for. Who else said one vote? Tucker Carlson was like one vote per one person, even though that's not how the system is set up right now. Yeah, let me know what you think. Hey, what's up, Jim? Jim says, at first I thought that was the reason they reversed Roe v. Wade. However, my theory was wrong. When I checked demographics, abortion breakdown in recent demographics, 33% is white, 66% is people of color. Now, I will add this video, this one right here is pretty old. So that's a good point. And I haven't looked up, but also, Jim, can you speak to this fact? So the last time that I looked up abortion, and the statistics, it seemed to be on a downward trend for a long time now. So this idea, it's kind of like, I want to make a connection real quick or make a point. It's kind of like people who were against the Me Too movement, or they were afraid of the Me Too movement. Some of them acted like, oh, Jim says yes. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. Some of them acted like women, this is the frame of reference that I feel like they were showing me. Women, yes, abortions are going down. Women were going around accusing people just randomly accusing people in the Me Too movement. But that wasn't my thought process towards it. And so they weren't for the movement because they thought, oh, people are just going to accuse someone of doing something. Generally speaking, women have nothing to gain but everything to lose when they come forward about, abuse. So in the same way that America has all these other issues going on right now, but overturning Roe v. Wade is what the Supreme Court is focused on. You get what I'm saying? That's what Congress, that's what GOPers, that's what the Republican Party wanted to get done. I blame the Democrats too, because they could have codified it a long time ago if they really cared about it. And last I checked, 60% of Americans are in favor of pro-choice. Let me know, is there a lag on my video? I see it seems to be like a little bit of a lag. Okay, we'll keep the video rolling.
White people are scared to death right now, particularly white males. They're scared to death that they are going to lose their power in the future. And they are. But if you want to get ready for the future, if you want to be treated well in the future, treat others well in the present. What we do in the present constructs the future. We called the Japanese, and you'll pardon me, but this is what we call them, slant-eyed little yellow. We didn't say that about the Germans. After the war, we rebuilt Germany and Japan, and we get along beautifully with the Japanese. That was in 1945 that we finally won that war. How many years ago was that? Figure that out quickly.
I'm not a math person, but
you're not a math person, but you know it wasn't that far,
right.
And it didn't.
Jay Elliott is funny. You could tell she's a teacher, right? Like, she just acts like a teacher. Figure that out quickly.
Take 50 years for us to have peace with the Japanese and the Germans, even though we dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. The Japanese hadn't killed 10 million people. Nowhere near that. We didn't drop any bombs on Germany, any atomic bombs on Germany. They were a different kind of people. We couldn't afford to do that. We killed how many Japanese people with 2 atomic bombs? And they forgave us. You want to talk about forgiveness? You want to talk about changing this thing? I cannot understand how Japanese people can stand the sight of any of us, and yet they do. I cannot understand why Black people who have been subjected to the ugliness that they've been subjected to in this country can get up every morning and go to work among us and not be absolutely furious.
I think it was James Baldwin who said to be a Negro and fairly, you know what? I'm gonna look up the quote because I don't want to mess up that. I'll look up the quote and keep the video rolling. 1 second.
And I don't understand why we allow white people to behave the way they do. I don't understand that. And my 3rd graders, after they'd gone through the exercise, couldn't understand it and wouldn't tolerate it. And when they went up to junior high and a junior high teacher used the N-word, one of my former students said, if you're going to use that word, I'm going to go out in the hall until you stop using it, because we don't use that word in this school. That was a 7th grader who told his teacher off. When we have enough students who are willing to confront people who are making racist, sexist, ageist, homophobic statements, we're going to be better off. We have got to stop tolerating the intolerable.
I agree. And have you noticed, like, do you think or do you feel that something happened after President Trump was in office? Some people feel like President Trump was not a racist at all. But I would ask them, does a racist say racist things? And the damage that a president, because they're in that position. I remember Lindsey Graham when Bill Clinton got in trouble for, the Monica Lewinsky situation. Lindsey Graham said a president can be impeached just for lowering the view of the presidential office. So look how far we've come from the 90s. You see what I'm saying? To now where people are not held accountable for the things that they say or the things that they do. And it's like the law is interpreted to protect them. And I just don't understand that. I agree, Jim. He brought out the worst in America. It's always been there, and they felt empowered. Yes. And I think that that is why Republicans and the GOPers are so against the idea of critical race theory, and they made it a thing. And they try to act like it's a indoctrination, and they framed it. And I wish I could find the tweet, but I couldn't find it anymore. There's a tweet from a guy who said, I'm going to make critical race theory a thing, redefine it, and use it as a weapon against the establishment. So notice we have the first African-American Secretary of Defense. And, there's the first African-American woman Supreme Court Justice, right? Like, so there's first in these type of things. And so when Secretary Lloyd Austin got in there, he was trying to figure out what is going on with extremism in the ranks. So I even in my last video that I showed is the military woke. I showed some clips from Fox News and showed how they utilize straw man fallacies to make their points. And they're literally against anything that's about diversity, equity, and inclusion. The very things which we say are founding principles to America, and they're definitely founding principles to the military, even though America and the military have not always lived up to it. But they have an issue and a problem with creating more space and sharing their influence and their power, which is the same thing that Jane Elliott is saying right now. I did find that quote from James Baldwin. Let me make that a little bigger for y'all. Here we go. James Baldwin, here's a photo of him. He says, to be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a rage almost all the time. I feel like this captures, I think, how a lot of people feel in the so-called Black community. No one's really white, no one's really Black, but in the reality, that's the labels that, you know, are on our job applications. Those are the labels that are on our birth certificate, you know, the labels that we can't really escape, right? So I can agree with this statement, and I think it shows still today, after civil rights and all that, like, this is still a reality. And if you don't know about Jayland Walker ran from the cops. He shouldn't have ran from the cops. But there's never anything that will excuse what the police did. So yes, he ran from the cops on his vehicle. Then he exited his vehicle. They say he shot, but there's no evidence that he was armed or no bullet shell was found in which he shot at the police. They say they tried to tase him, but they fired over 90 shots at him. 60 bullets hit his body. He was running from the police. One of the states recently, and I'll try to find it, but I don't want to stop the show. There's so much information in here. That's why I love to, you know, come and do the show with you all and have conversations with you all. But one state just said that police will no longer be running after criminals, which makes sense to me. You have the person's vehicle, you have their license plate. There's no need to continue to run after this person. Or just, if you're going to run, just keep running after the person. Somebody stay with the police vehicles. They can't run forever. But the crazy part about it is when you go watch that video, it really looks like, that's pretty loud. 1 second. When you go watch that video, it looks like when the police officer is shooting, if anybody's ever been in the military or you know about flagging, the cop almost got in the line of fire of the other cop, and everybody commenced to fire. And when they fired, it sounded exactly like that 4th of July shooter. I mean, everybody opened fire, and then everyone yelled ceasefire. There's no reason for that. There's no reason for that. So he ran from the cops, and okay, so now he's dead. So this is the kind of thing that, you know, puts people in a rage all the time. This is the reason why Black Lives Matter even exists. Whether you agree with the organization or not is beside the point. But the sentiment, the idea is what really matters. Let's keep it rolling.
If it's intolerable for my Black cousins, and every Black person on this earth is one of my cousins, if it's intolerable for them, it's intolerable for me. I will not tolerate it. I will not tolerate it. That is not that. I am required not to tolerate that kind of treatment for the people who are related to me. And that's every person on the face of the earth.
And see, I'm finding out that there are a lot more racist people. And that the what if the American experiment is over, and the pieces of it that they found out that worked, that could keep people being sort of dumb, that could keep people focused on not our officials and what our elected or selected, depending on how you believe, officials should be doing for us, could focus on our neighbor and what our neighbor should or shouldn't have. What if, like, and oh wow, my mind's going so fast. What about science as well? Because Jane Elliott just said something, that every Black person is a cousin of hers. So if you know anything about scientific race theory, it was created by a Polish German man, and nothing about race is scientific unless you want to say the classification, right? Like my nose or my eyes or my features, but anything else, it doesn't, like, we are of the same species. But we can look back at history and see how they try to say that black people, first of all, the 3/5 clause, that black folks were 3/5 of a human and therefore were not able to have any type of rights. But we see it goes back even further, that the more dark-skinned you are, the less of intelligence you were thought to be. So I just find it interesting that science even goes to show that the first 100% human DNA genome started over there in the land that is called Africa, which used to have a different name before it was named after John Africanus, a European man. So even science agrees on these facts, which is why Jane Elliott could say every black person is her cousin. She also brought out the fact that the way you treat people, I think she's highlighting the fact the way you treat people or the way you allow people to be treated, it is going to come back around to you, which is why I think I would wonder if the white people who are afraid of replacement theory, is it because of the ways that some of their ancestors or some people now are allowing people of color to be treated? Now, I understand something, like we can't change the whole world, right? But we can ensure that our workplace is free from harassment or discrimination. We can, if you're in the military, you can, there's channels you can go through to put in complaints to make sure people are treated with dignity and respect. And if you have a position of respect or power, then you have the responsibility to say something. I could even bring it to the scriptures on that. Over in Ezekiel, it says, if you see your brother going the wrong way and you don't warn him, then the blood will be required of your hands. But if you warn him, then you are free and clear and you reserve your honor. Jim says, correct. And we all, every one of us have some percent of African descent. Exactly. Yes, we are all related. I agree. So, but it's very unfortunate in 2022, like we still have to have these same conversations in an age where people are smarter now than ever before. Don't believe the hype and don't believe the narrative that, everyone is just a walking zombie. If there's a lot of people who are walking zombies, they're a lot smarter and they have a lot more access to information than we've ever had. Everyone is walking around with a computer in their pocket. Now, what you choose to do with it, whether you're looking at the Kardashians all the time or you choose to educate yourself with it, that's on you. But we do have more access to information now than we've ever had before. And I just want to expose the undertones and the spiritual ramifications of not standing up for what's right and righteous.
If your ignorance is such that you will mistreat somebody because of your ignorance about the color of their skin, don't do it around me. Number one, I've been threatened with death lots of times. Now I say, go for it, fool. My husband died 4 years ago. Being with him would not be a bad thing for me. Death is not the worst thing that can happen to you. Living a worthless, useless life is much worse than dying.
So as you can see, Jane Elliott doesn't play any games. I don't agree with her on everything. Once again, everything is about the information that we have at the time, right? Our experiences. We bring all of that into play. And all I'm saying is, Convo Blueprint is about going to the root of something and exploring the ideas to why you feel the way you do. That's what I really desire to do. That's my endeavor for this channel, is to figure out the root of something. Because a lot of people have strong feelings, but at the end of the day, can you elaborate? Can you explain to another human being why you feel the way you do? Because if you can't, I would argue that that's not truly the way you feel, and it's not a result of something that you came up with. Maybe it was implanted in you. Maybe you got it from Fox News, or maybe you got it from CNN, or maybe you got it from your education. But does that make it true, or does that make it a reality? I don't think so.
And right now, white people are really frightened.
We already watched that one. So let's go over 3 weeks ago. 3 3 weeks ago, Jane Elliott did an interview with the Last Outlaws podcast. So let's check this one out. Once again, you're always free to join the conversation in the comments, and check out my video, Roe v. Wade. I think I exposed some real good nuggets there, and I just wanted to continue it from the aspect of someone who's older and maybe wiser. I mean, she's lived longer than I have, and she's been doing this for a long time. And who better than a European person, a white person, to speak about such things in comparison to other white people? If we want to understand the culture of other peoples, then we should allow those people to speak and validate those people's feelings, understandings, and experience, and then we can use them to enhance the way that we think. And so I think that the reason why Republicans and GOPers made critical race theory a thing, because they want to shut down all conversation surrounding race, like what we see in Florida with the Stop Woke Act and all these, now they want to teach slavery. I saw this in the news. They want to teach slavery as like relocation now. And it's just very interesting that there's an attempt to wash history of the facts and truth about how we got here today, which is the question that critical race theory tries to answer.
Two major political point of views.
Well, my first thought on Roe v. Wade is all we need to do to prevent people getting an abortion is tell young men that if they contribute to an unwanted pregnancy, they must then submit to involuntary vasectomy so that they don't contribute to another unwanted pregnancy.
What do y'all think about that? Let me know in the comments. That's crazy. What do you think about it?
That will make them think twice about contributing to unwanted pregnancies. This is not just a female issue. This is a male and female issue. Now, you need to know that vasectomy is done in the doctor's office. It doesn't take but 15 minutes. It's snip, snip, and it is, you can change it. You can still you can have it fixed so that you don't have to be without the ability to impregnate someone. You cannot redo or undo pregnancy. That is something that once you have a child, you have a child, and even if you give it up for adoption, that child, you can hear that child crying in the night. That's not.
So Jim says, yeah, that's crazy. So do you think that restricting abortion is crazy as well? And let me ask a question that I already feel is crazy. But what do you think about the gentleman in Mississippi who said, I should try to pull that up. The gentleman in Mississippi who said, it doesn't matter, a 12-year-old who is pregnant due to rape and incest should have to carry that child because it's God's will or something like that. What do you think about how a certain party is using religion to bring forth their agenda? And I want to add a B part to that question. Do you think there's a difference between those in Islam who believe that Sharia law should be the culture, the societal norm, and the Christian conservative in America? Jim says you have to check that statistic. It's not always reversible. I agree. Let me try to find that Mississippi official says even rape, incest. Maybe that'll get me there. 5 days ago. Here we go. I love to make detours on the show because I'm like, you know what? I got to be able to share all the information and the things that I heard so we can have a complete conversation, right? Okay. Mississippi House Speaker says 12-year-old incest victims should continue pregnancies to term. What do you all think about that? Do you think that's crazy? Jim, what do you think? So let's read some. Reading is fundamental. Not enough people read. Oh, random thought. Like, isn't it crazy? Like, kids don't learn cursive anymore in school. It makes me want to write in cursive more. Because yeah, that's so random. Jim says, no. Religion is a personal choice. Don't make laws based on your religion. You follow your religion. Don't force it on others. I agree 100%. And isn't it interesting that the people who believe the narrative that their ancestors came over here to escape religious persecution would then utilize religion to persecute others who don't agree with them? Isn't that crazy? So Mississippi House Speaker Philip Gunn, Republican, told reporters Wednesday it is his personal belief. So he believes his personal belief should be the law. That if a 12-year-old girl is a victim of incest, she should still be made to carry resulting pregnancy to term. I believe that life begins at conception and every life is valuable. Those are my personal beliefs, Gunn said, which a reporter then asked, so that 12-year-old child molested by her father or uncle should carry that child to term? To which Gunn replied, that is my personal belief. A challenge to a Mississippi law banning abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy made its own way to the Supreme Court, where it was upheld in a decision that overturned the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling that guaranteed the right to an abortion. A separate state law passed in 2007 bans abortions outright if Roe were overturned, with exceptions for rape and instances when the mother's life is at risk. The 15-week law does not include a rape exception, and neither law makes exceptions for incest. That's crazy to me. The Mississippi Free Press reports that several GOP lawmakers want the rape exception eliminated from the trigger ban, which would mean abortions would only be allowed to save the life of the mother. And I just think, like, as if it's not traumatic enough, a 12-year-old, and it's his personal belief. So this Mississippi, like, would he feel this way if it was his daughter? Jackson Women's Health Organization, which challenged the 15-week ban, filed a lawsuit on Monday seeking to prevent Mississippi from activating its more expensive trigger ban. In its lawsuit, the group argues that abortions are still protected in Mississippi by the state's own constitution through a 1998 decision by the Mississippi Supreme Court. The trigger ban was certified by Mississippi Attorney General Lynn Fitch Monday. Jim says that is what I wonder. People change when it's their family. I agree. The trigger ban was certified by Mississippi Attorney General Lynn Fitch Monday. Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves, Republican, declared June Sanctity of Life Month on Wednesday in celebration of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. Mississippi currently has the nation's highest infant fetal mortality rates. And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it a gentleman who blamed Black women for this? I'm not gonna look that up, but there was a politician who blamed, I feel like it was from Mississippi, who blamed this statistic on Black women. So they have the highest infant and fetal mortality rates. Shouldn't they be working on that and investigating and figuring out why? According to the CDC, as the lowest life expectancy in the country. And you know what they're not? You know what they're not addressing? I agree, Jim, shaking my head. You know what they're not addressing? That's within all of this too? Poverty, healthcare. Can y'all really believe in 2022, while the pandemic is still ongoing and President Joe Biden is saying we're going to have another pandemic? Like, we still don't have healthcare. Why don't we have Medicare for all? When we have hundreds of billions of dollars to send to Ukraine, which we're just causing them to be in debt. They can't pay that money back. Mississippi is last in everything. Yup. Keep it rolling.
Not something you can do over. You can do over vasectomy. You can have that redone. You can have that replaced. It's time to get over the idea that pregnancy is only a female problem.
Well, how do you feel about the
furthermore?
Yeah, sure.
As long as the woman is the one who is responsible for peopling the earth, no man, unless he has the ability to have a baby, has the right to tell her what she can do with her body. You do not have the right to tell women what they can do with their body.
So I did a quick search on vasectomies. It says, let me make that bigger for y'all. Right here, it's estimated that the success rate of a vasectomy is 75% if you have your vasectomy reversed within the first 3 years or within 3 years, up to 55% after 3 to 8 years, between 40 and 45% after 9 to 14 years. So that is a issue with the vasectomy. But I feel like Jane Elliott's just bringing this up as an equivocation to cause people to think about, telling women what to do with their bodies.
If you can't tell people what they can do with their guns, how in the devil can you tell people what they can do with their bodies? This whole thing is ridiculous. This whole thing is the result of the Republicans. Donald Trump has knocked the L out of the word Republican. It is now Republican because that's the only area that he thinks about and that many of his followers think about. It's time for them to think at least above the
She got jokes. Jane Elliott got jokes for days.
waist and start thinking of women as fully functioning human beings without whom there would be no men.
Well, the pro-choice argument has majority support among independents, vast support among Democrats, and majority support among a majority of Americans. So how can the Republicans push this and maintain their credibility when most Americans feel the other way?
They are
Before she answered that, how do y'all think that I saw something about Republicans being surprised at Democrats' lack of action since overturning Roe v. Wade. Now, this issue to me exposes that there's no difference between Democrats and Republicans. I feel due to the upcoming election, due to the presidential election in 2024 and the midterms, and I don't know, did Trump say he was going to run in 2024? Allegedly, Alex Jones said that Trump was going to talk about starting his campaign today. I feel like this is a attempt for Republicans to hold on to their power and position with the religious right, to make this about God, because it seems like the right wing I'm not against the right wing. I'm not with the left wing either. I'm for the truth. So I guess if they're lying, I'm against them. Jim says he has not announced as far as the same. Okay, I didn't know if he did yet either. Like anytime they put freedom behind something, remember Paul Ryan talked about when they were debating Medicare for all, he talked about, well, we want Americans to have the freedom to choose their doctor. And like, he made all these straw man fallacies and equivocations when the reality is more Americans go bankrupt from healthcare than any other situation. So why would that not be the first thing that Congress wants to do? Democrats can't say nothing about the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade because they could have codified it into law, but they didn't. You see what I'm saying? So this is a clear indication to me that the two-party system is really a one-party system. And like George Carlin, the comedian, he said, it's a big club and you ain't in it. And I think this is something that's showing us that. And it's also, I can be pro-life all day long in my home, in my personal life. But to bring my personal life and say that should be the law which governs you is something else. And like Jane Elliott, what she said about the whole gun control, if we can't tell people what to do with their guns, then how, you know what I'm saying? And isn't it interesting that this all happened around the time when there's like a shortage of baby formula? So to make it seem like, go watch my Roe v. Wade. I'm gonna stop talking now. Go watch my Roe v. Wade show, because I brought out some interesting things on there and talked about how the religious right, the GOPers, the pro-life movement is very hypocritical, because when it comes to advocating for those who are born or the social program after the baby's born, they just don't give a damn about that. They don't care. They don't care that kids are going hungry in America. They don't want social programs or after school programs. They don't want to put funding towards that. Jim says, but to me, it's also like blaming the victim. When you say the Democrats didn't codify abortion. Can you elaborate a little bit more? I mean, what I'm saying is, like, they could have made it into law if they wanted. We sat through 3 Supreme Court interviews where they all said it's already law. Interesting. Exactly. Yes, they lied under oath. And I said that when I first came on, that, yeah, they lied. And I just, I also think that sometimes things are done in society. There's so much power in making certain people look bad. So the idea, like, this probably makes the average American think that, everyone's just going out and having an abortion. And even if that is the case, why not? Why is our government, why are we not creating a better America so that we won't have to have the conversation about abortion? Maybe with better healthcare and having a sustainable economy. And you get what I'm saying? Like, if we work on these things, then this would be less of an issue than it is. Economically speaking, children are very expensive. You see what I'm saying? So if we had a better economy, then people would have more children. We could say that, for in America at least.
Being supported by a minority group called the evangelical Christians. And this whole problem started when the evangelical Christians, when
I agree. Evangelical Christians are the reason why President Trump was able to be in office. If you haven't watched the Netflix show, The Family, you should watch it. It's about the people who started the National Prayer Breakfast. Jim says, so as far as Dems codifying it, they had no idea one Moscow Mitch would hold up and refuse Obama his Supreme Court justice. So, Jim, what I have found out through Jimmy Dore recently is that Democrats are funding radical Republicans, and like this is crazy. In an attempt to make them seem more outrageous, they're actually funding the radical Republicans. That is crazy to me. So you're funding the person that you think has a radical ideology, so you're making it bigger, hoping that nobody votes for the particular person. And then what President Biden recently did is he put someone in charge of I forget the guy's name, but in charge of the Social Security Department, who believes that we need to do away with Social Security. Now that's crazy. Moscow Mitch gave Trump 3 seats. That's what put it on the chopping block. I agree. And I think that, when people try to say, oh, the economy was so great under President Trump and we were paying less for gas. Yes, all that is true. But when we think about how the decisions a president makes based on the economy, it's not that quick of a turnaround. So the economic prowess of a president for the first year to 2 is based on the last president's, policies that Congress signed off on, that Congress passed the budgets for, the agreed upon budgets. That's how it works. So if they try to act like, oh, under Trump, it was so much better off, like the policies he instituted are taking place now. One of the reasons why I believe we know that is because he talked about ensuring that every federal organization is essentially destroyed. And now we're seeing that through the Supreme Court. That's why he had to get those 3 folks on there and the Neil Gorsuch. Yes, and Dems are switching to vote for the radical Republicans in the primary. It seems like it. They will switch back to Dem for the actual vote. Yeah, and it's just I just think it's crazy because voting is not going to get us out of this. Voting is not going to do anything. This is my opinion now. Voting isn't going to help us. We need actual policy. So now Democrats started fundraising right after, the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And now they're going to say, oh, you got to vote for us to secure women's rights and all this stuff. But what are they actually doing? Even now, about the situations that are going on in America, we see inaction. It is crazy, and Republicans have done the same for years. Exactly. And I think it's time for a third party. I'm kind of disappointed in Bernie Sanders, who said that he would support President Joe Biden if he runs again. First of all, it's like, why? He doesn't have a progressive agenda, and he cannot forward an agenda that's progressive. So how does that jive with Bernie Sanders's goals and the things he talks about when President Biden has zero progressive ideas that he's implementing, that he's pushing for? That's crazy.
Frank, what's his? You know who I'm talking about. Anyway, his father started the evangelical business in Great Britain. Frank brought it to this country and taught it to people. Now he says, stay away from the evangelical faith because it has been distorted to the point where you cannot recognize it. Evangelical Christians are trying to take us back to the 1800s. That's what this whole thing is all about. We don't want to be there.
Do you think that evangelical Christians are racist or bigoted? I'm going to type that in here real quick. Jim says Bernie Sanders has a lot of unhappy followers. Yeah, I just think Jim says, yes, they are. He believes that evangelical Christians are racist, both racist and bigoted. I feel like I use bigoted there because bigoted encompasses so much. It encompasses racism. It encompasses all of it. But the fact that they do want to take us back, and that was, do you know MAGA means witch? I think that's interesting because I literally feel like President Trump casted a spell on everyone to show the worst parts of them and then called it good. This is the crazy thing about Christian evangelicals who supported President Trump. They brought out the big hitters like Franklin Graham, and remember they made excuses for all his moral failures. But the biggest thing that got me is he was asked both times where he was running for office, he was asked if he ever repented. To my knowledge, I have never heard any other elected official, any other person running for government office, if they ever repented. That's a big sign to me. And then to hold the Bible upside down and go in front of a church, y'all, this is a lot.
Women don't want to be, when I was a kid, women should be broke, barefoot, and pregnant. No, that isn't what we need to be anymore. That is not the way women have to live anymore. And we can't afford to have a society in which.
Oh, and I think that's very sad that there was a time where women were seen as property. And maybe there's a lot of, Christian nationalists. That's a new thing that I heard recently. I mean, if you go back and watch my Roe v. Wade video, there are podcasters and stuff. There are people who are proclaimed Christian nationalists who believe this about women. And I just think that is crazy to me. I'm like, how can you say that you're a Christian, or how can you be reading the same Bible I am and think that these type of things are okay? Jim says Trump was not the perfect vessel for them, but he did what they wanted. Exactly. Yeah, he didn't have it. And the fact that his image, I think that's the perfect way that we know white privilege exists, or a more comfortable term, however you want to clarify it. But no matter what he did or no matter what he does, still today, there are people who believe he can do no wrong. And that is crazy to be given the benefit of the doubt. So much so to where if we watch something on TV, he said storm the Capitol, but he didn't do nothing wrong. He didn't incite it. Right? You know what I mean? He's not racist. Well, does a racist person say racist things? I don't know. You get what I'm saying? So I just think that that's Isaiah 5:20. Woe to those who called good evil and evil good. Like, we're living in a time where, the separation between good and evil is being blurred, and it's being blurred by the people who have the most influence. And you cannot, at your personal level, at your family level, at your community level, let the narrative be changed for what's good and evil. It's only the Most High who determines what's good and evil. And guess what? He gave all of us a barometer as humans, the knowledge of what's good and evil. And you had a Christian Black president, family man, no marital issues. Correct. Thank you.
Women are only good for reproduction. Women know a whole lot more than many men do, quite frankly, because we've had experiences that you can't possibly have. I'm absolutely opposed to anyone telling me or anyone else what they can do with their bodies.
So, do you mind if I ask a personal? Well, let me, if you don't mind, ask a personal question. Do you consider yourself a religious person?
Absolutely, I consider myself a religious person. But that's another thing that we have twisted beyond recognition. In the Bible, it says, the golden rule is, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Do you believe that religious?
I want to add to that too. I think it's over in Matthew, when they asked Yahusha, the one they call Christ, what's the most important commandment? He said, the most important commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And the second is like unto the first, meaning they're almost equal. You know what I mean? It's likened to the first, which is to love your neighbor as yourself.
Just people follow that rule. Do you believe that Christian men treat women the way men want to be treated? Do you believe that old people treat young people the way old people want to be treated? Do you believe that Christians treat Muslims the way Christians want to be treated? See, I don't believe in the golden rule. I'm a religious person, but I believe in the platinum rule. The platinum rule says, do unto others as others.
Terror Destroyer says, the Hippocratic Oath, I will give no deadly medicine to anyone nor suggest any such counsel. I will not give to a woman an abortive pessary. Pessary, a device worn to prevent conception. That's in the Hippocratic Oath? I've not heard that. Jim says, same level, just as important. I agree. And what's interesting, right? I don't necessarily believe in the idea of Christianity. I don't think, and when I say that, I'm just saying we don't find in the scripture where Jesus Christ, or Yahusha is what I call him, where he told us to be Christian. And over in Acts, it tells us, I believe it's Acts 11:26, or it could be 19:26. It says, and the disciples were called Christian at Antioch. They were persecuted in Antioch. The disciples did not call themselves Christians. The ones who persecuted them called themselves Christians. But we'll even go with the modern day definition of Christian, which is to be Christ-like. So when I say, when he replied what the most important commandment is, and that to love God and to love your neighbor, right? Like loving your neighbor. Come on now. Why would you want them to have less? Jim says, I have not heard that either.
Would have you do unto them. I don't know how everyone else wants to be treated. I know they don't all want to be treated the way I do, So I have to read and study and find out about other people so that I know how other people might want to be treated. I know that you, as a young man, do not want to be treated the way I, as an old woman, want to be treated. And I don't have the right to treat you the way I want to be treated. So I think we use the Bible when we need it. We use it to support what we need and support our needs and support our desires. But we also use it, the Bible says, thou shalt not kill. The Quran says, to kill one person, it is as if you had killed the entire world. And what are we busy doing in this country this last weekend? What were people busy doing? Killing one another. So yeah, you can talk about the Bible until hell freezes over, but if you don't believe, if you don't act upon what you learned in the Bible, you've made a big mistake. Either do it or don't do it.
Well, I feel that
I also feel like the scripture can be used like a gun. A gun can be used to protect yourself. A gun can be used to kill, right? Like, how often throughout history has the certain interpretations of the scriptures been used to kill people, right? Like Victoria says, the Quran says, those who say our creator is God and follow the straight path shall have nothing to fear or to regret. They shall forever dwell in paradise as a reward for their labors. Thank you. Isn't that beautiful? That's beautiful. That is beautiful. So it just makes me think that, I forgot where I was going. I just think if we understand that within each human being, we all I was talking about how people have weaponized the Bible. Agreed. And they've weaponized it for their own vanity, their own glory, their own power, their own position for what they want. That has been since the beginning. And that has been since Christ walked the earth. But if we understand, I feel like the answer to this situation, whether you're a believer of the Most High or not, the answer to the situation is that each one of us bears the image of the Creator. And if we look at that simple fact, then we will inherently treat people with dignity and respect. If you love yourself, how can you not love your neighbor? The fact that we're not taking care of people in our country shows, like, we're not taking care of the homeless. We're not doing anything about housing. We're not doing anything about food. We're not, you know what I'm saying? So we're not creating a situation in which children being born into can even be safe. Those are the conversations we need to be having. And I guarantee you we would talk less about abortion and it will continue to go down. That's my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments. Oh, and if you're watching, if you could do me a favor, you don't have to, but share. If you're enjoying the stream, join the stream, like it, share it, subscribe. Thank you.
that the Republican argument, throwing the Christian philosophy out there in regard to abortion is kind of a sham and kind of a false flag. In my opinion, I think they want to go back to old school Americana, where women cooked and cleaned and were kind of a subclass citizen. So, I mean,
but the reason for that is power. Mm-hmm. Males, pale, stale males want to keep themselves in power, and they are seeing more and more women and more people who aren't their color in positions of power in this country, and that's a good thing. That's a very good thing, because if you share power, we're all going to be more comfortable than we were back in the 1800s and the 1700s when men knew everything. Well, we're in this mess right now because men still think they know everything. You talk to any woman, all you have to do is see if you can get the tape or find something with those five Republican men questioning that black woman who is going to be on the Supreme Court.
Speaking of which, I don't know if she's going to talk about this because I have not watched this video. I'm enjoying with y'all for the first time. What do you all think? Let me know in the comments what you think about the idea of defining what a man or a woman is. Do you think, two-part question. I don't know why I like to ask y'all two-part questions, but also, do you think that when you define, like, the fact that they're being asked to define what a man or a woman is, do you think that's a signification of where we are as a society? I think so. When we ask something that is so basic, I think it shows that society is regressing, and it's just people choosing to be ignorant. It's almost like there are so many people in government who are allergic to diversity, equity, inclusion, equality, these pillars that they say they represent. Like, they are so afraid of actually sharing the power. They're so afraid of actually being the America that we say we are and acknowledging our past failures. How can you as a person, or how can I as a person, change from who I've been if I won't look in the mirror and acknowledge who I've been and acknowledge who I am now in order to project and make the necessary changes of the person that I want to be?
Watch that questioning of that woman by those 4 pale, stale males, and you will be absolutely sick to your stomach. It would be if you were me, because here they are attacking that brilliant woman, and she's sitting there just dealing with it, just like she has always done where we colorless people are concerned, because she has to. And she dealt with it absolutely beautifully. Not one of them deserved to be in a position to ask that woman any of the questions they asked her. They asked her questions that they had no business asking her, things like, oh, it was ridiculous. Get a copy of that and watch it. You'll be.
How many people watched it in the comments? Let me know if you watched the hearing of Ketanji Brown Jackson, the confirmation. I also thought it was interesting how they tried to make it seem like she was soft on crime. That was very interesting, based on her past rulings. Yeah, that was interesting. And specifically, they tried to make it seem like she was soft on crimes of pedophilia. But we see, a Mississippi state official saying that due to rape and incest, it's his personal belief that, and that's also a cop out, because he's saying it's his personal belief, but how does that affect the law in which Mississippi is going to instate? Yeah, they pulled some quick tricks. I agree, and try to trip her up. And I feel like when she took a pause, I think she was probably like, these questions are so basic, I don't even want to answer it. Like, have you ever done that? I've done that before. You ever been asked a question by your boss or, a supervisor, and you're like, I don't even want to answer that. Or it just throws you off in a meeting because it's so stupid. That's happened to me before. And we saw Cory Booker's comments. Yes, we did. I was not happy with Cory Booker. Have you seen the episode? Maybe I'll have to do the episode with Jon Stewart on Apple TV. I was not too happy with Cory Booker and his inability to call a thing in his conversation with Jon Stewart on that show on Apple TV. I don't know if you saw that one, but I probably will need to do a video on that.
As disgusted as I was.
So how much of this is white protectionism?
Well, well, of course, racism is white protectionism. You know that as well as I do. That's kind of a silly question.
Yep.
However,
how much of the abortion concept and argument by the Republicans is white protectionism?
Well, what happened? What the reason Donald Soros T. Rump decided that we were going to put a wall on the southern border of the United States is because he said openly, we don't want those brown-skinned people coming in here because brown-skinned people reproduce too rapidly. He knows that we're going to be outnumbered. White people are going to be a numerical minority in this country within 30 years, less than that now. He closed the Planned Parenthood.
Jim, can I put you on the spot? First, I would ask, like, if you identify as white, and you don't have to answer this. And I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot, but I feel like if we're gonna have the conversation, let's have the conversation, right? Do you feel any? I know that I believe that you're in an interracial marriage, and so that says something about you. Do you feel a particular way if and when um, white people in this country become a minority? Do you feel like any huge shifts are going to take place, or that it would, be negative for your existence? Because I feel like that's the reason why Fox News has like over 12 billion views on YouTube alone. They're I mean, 12 billion views, and every day they're just spewing ignorance and nonsense. And I have always watched Fox News because I'm like, I want to know what people around me are watching. I want to know what's influencing the culture. And to me, they are a big influence, a big voice in the culture. And so I want to be able to combat that voice. So that's why, I did that video, Is the Military Woke? And in there, I showed a clip from Fox News. So I feel I'm human. Yes, the tables are turning. Okay, do you feel threatened that the tables are turning? I feel I'm human. That's how you identify. Yeah, do you feel like it's going to impact you in a negative way? Because that's what I feel like a lot of people feel, that by sharing their space now, or sharing the power now, even Richard Spencer, remember the guy from the alt-right, he felt like, okay, I don't feel threatened. Thank you. Yeah. And if you did, would you tell me anyway? No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I feel like a lot of people feel that it's going to be some type of, negative thing. But I'm like, why and how? I don't understand.
Parenthood, whatever. What is the word I want? Stop. He wants to stop abortions because somebody read the book to him that was written by a man who said the number one problem in the United States of America is there are not enough white babies being born in this country today. If we do not put a stop to this, white people.
And this is where she's talking about the birth dearth, which is why I wanted to do this show, because that's an interesting concept. That book written by Ben Wattenberg. And it is a very interesting concept. And I wanted to do this show because I feel like this is where the replacement theory came from. It's just an offshoot. It's like a brainstorm. It's a limb on the tree of the birth dearth.
People will be a numerical minority in this country, and this will no longer be a white man's land. Now, Ben Wattenberg was a brilliant Jewish male. He wrote that, and evidently somebody read it to Mr. Trump, because he couldn't have read it himself. I don't think he's read much but the Bobbsey twins since he was born. But you need to realize that Ben Wattenberg got such ugly response to that he rewrote the thing and republished it. And the second one he wrote doesn't have that first paragraph in it. If you didn't read the first paragraph of the book, The Birth Dearth, you don't understand what was going on when Donald Trump was president. He's trying to avoid having white people be a numerical minority in the United States of America. He might as well give that up, because that is inevitable. That is going to happen. And
I feel like that's what his comments were about. We don't want people from S-hole countries was really about. And then he named the white countries. Remember that lady, I think her name was Nielsen or something like that, who said that she didn't know the population of like Norway or Scandinavia was predominantly white? If Trump did not read it, Stephen Miller did. Exactly. Yep.
Evidently he doesn't know, and nobody has told him, that only 15 to 18% of the population of the world is classified as white. And only half of that is male. So only from 7 to 9% of the population of the world is classified as white males. If he knew that, he'd be going around the world trying to put a stop to people of different colors coming together. He's in a real scary situation for him. But for the rest of us, it's not a scary situation, because we all started out very colorful. You have black in your background. I have black in my background. And if you don't believe me, get your DNA done and you trace your DNA back as far as you can. And you'll find out that you and every person listening to this will find that they have a certain percentage of their DNA came from a country in Africa, because we all came from the same place. It's time for us.
Do y'all believe and accept that fact? That's where human life started. It is interesting to me that so many people will focus on how we are different and how they are culturally supremacist, meaning people who look like them. Because I feel like it's time to use some new words. Racism. That's why I used bigotry earlier. I feel like it's time to use some new words so we can keep the conversation going further. You know, racism has its connotations and people get upset and stuff. But if I say you are a cultural supremacist, meaning that, right? Because have you noticed when it comes to talking about so-called Black culture in America, it's always like fatherless homes. You know, people need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. They never, these cultural supremacists never want to address the issues that which occurred to put people in groups of being disenfranchised. You see what I mean? They never want to address the banking practices or the economic terrorism of things. That is what I said earlier. Thank you. Yeah, like it's just, you know, if we're going to have a more prosperous union, a better society, then we have to address the things, and we cannot be cultural supremacists. And like, I thought everyone's American, but you ever notice something like we don't have to ever say European American, but we got to say Asian American, Hispanic American, Black American. You get what I mean? African American. But see, like these are the labels that we can't escape. And it's largely based on what you look like, which doesn't have much to do with the character or the reflection of who you are as a person.
Us to realize that, to appreciate that, and to rejoice in that, instead of pretending that's not true. Oh no, my people came from Peking man. Well, I'm sorry, madam, but they did not come from Peking man. Your people came from Africa, just like mine did. I've had that argument before. I have that argument almost every time I open my mouth, because white folks are not white. This is not white. This is white. This is not white. And your shirt's fairly light, but it's a whole lot lighter than your skin. And your skin is a shade of brown, just like mine is. Get over it. And if you don't believe that, then you get this book. Have you read this book? Richard Rodriguez' book, Brown.
No, I haven't.
Oh my God, get this book and read it. It will shiver your timbers.
So I'll say this to everybody. So every time I interview you, I get tons of questions. What was that book she was talking about? What was this book? What was that book? So we're going to put a link to Jane's website down in the description where you can find her recommended reading materials. So
well, this is one of the ones that isn't on my website, and you all have to read it because it's got just listen to one sentence out of this.
Sure.
Oh, you know what I'm talking about. Of course, I understand what you're talking about. Race is the sine qua non among American transactions. Without race, we wouldn't have music, movies, prisons, politics, history, libraries, colleges, private conversations, motives. Dorothy Dandridge, Bill Clinton. Race is America's theme, not freedom, not democracy. Race is America's theme. And we play it, we sing it, we dance it, we live it, we talk it, we study it, and we wouldn't. And then after you read that book, get the book, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. Get the book, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. It isn't on my list, it isn't on my bibliography. But get it and read it. You'll just be, it'll shiver your timbers, I'm telling you. It'll make a difference in the way you think about the world.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think Obama did enough to protect abortion? Many have argued that with a Democratic House and Senate, that he should have done more, or at least tried to codify Roe v. Wade. So do you think Obama did enough?
Do you happen to remember what Mitch McConnell was doing while Obama was president? Do you think?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
there was anything that Obama could have?
Now, Now, Jim, she getting to the part about Mitch McConnell.
Done enough of with Mitch McConnell there demanding that everything be done his way. Of course, Obama didn't do as much as we would have liked to have had done. But you want to remember there were several other things that he had to do at that time. And right now, Joe Biden is having to clean up the mess that was created with 4 years of a really bad president with some really bad ideas. He's got more on his plate than any president I've seen since Franklin Roosevelt. Franklin Roosevelt and Harry Truman had a lot to think about. But this man has a whole bunch of stuff that we would never have had if we had had a president who knew what he was doing. I just finished reading. Here's another book you ought to read, people. Oh, forget it. But I just finished reading another book that everybody should read. And here's a book everybody should read.
Do you all remember? I was trying to find it just a second ago. Jim says, yes, race is America's theme. I agree. The labels that we can't get away from, the labels that largely determine, your level of success still in this country, and where you're born, and your opportunity is still largely based on your race. I was trying to find, do you all remember when President Obama got in office? Do you remember Mitch McConnell said his only goal is to ensure that President Obama doesn't pass any meaningful legislation? Do you all remember that?
It's written by a man who is a Jewish man, and he talks about gangsters versus Nazis. Have you read it? Gangsters versus Nazis. Get it and read it. It is just fantastic when you realize that people of the Jewish faith, Jewish gangsters during the 40s got together and kept the Germans, the Hitlerites, out of this country. It is just a fantastic book. Everybody has to read it. It's a piece of history that I had heard the names of these people in my youth, but I didn't realize that what they were doing was keeping the Bund from being active in the United States of America, in his cities. Everybody has to read the book. It is just terrific.
Well, you mentioned Trump a little bit. He's likely going to be the Republican nominee in 2024. He's dropped hints. Well, he thinks he's going to be. He's dropped hints that he plans to run again.
He should run. He should run. He should run to San Diego and stay there in a hole. He should. No, I don't know. I don't think he will have that opportunity. I think the Congress is going to look at what he has done. Wait until we see what they learn, what the 1-6 committee learned.
So do you think Trump will run in 2024? Will he be indicted and prevented by Congress? Jim says he also said he wanted to make sure Obama was a one-term president, and we saw how that worked out. I remember that. Yep. I found when I Googled, that one is the first thing that came up. Don't come to San Diego.
When we find out what they learned, that is going to put him in a position where he is not, absolutely is not, he won't be able to run for the presidency. You cannot do the things that he has done and still run for the presidency. You can't do that.
Yeah, well, we'll wait and see,
Yeah, I feel like we'll wait and see. And I feel like the time which justice takes for people who take an oath and swear to the American people, why is justice so slow when it comes to the bureaucracy of it? Like somebody given the responsibility of holding the nuclear codes. You get what I'm saying? Like, but when it comes to Ray or Pablo, I know I'm stereotyping, but when it comes to people who are selling drugs in the community or low-level criminals, like it's like the police are on them. But when it comes to people who swore an oath to the entire country and served in positions in which they, had great moral character failure, I don't understand why justice is so slow. Like, how much proof do you need? For example, why is Matt Gaetz not in jail? for the sex trafficking, in which they have Apple receipts, testimony from people rolling on him who participated. That guy's in jail. But Matt Gaetz, who also asked President Trump for a pardon, is still in Congress. Why? I don't understand that. So that's what makes me say, okay, we'll see.
Neither one of us are fortune tellers on to that effect. So let's say it's Trump or it's DeSantis or whoever gets the nomination. The Democrats are not really in a good position. Joe has failing approval numbers, and Harris is even more unpopular. Who do you see as the savior for the Democrats? Who's going to come in and be a strong candidate?
Well, I think the man who attacked the governor of Texas last week, and then who was called an ugly name because he did it, I think that man is going to be president someday. I wouldn't be surprised if it would be in 24, but it will not be DeSantis. Do you have your legacy? Do you?
So she's talking about Beto O'Rourke, right? I think she is talking about Beto O'Rourke.
Realize how ridiculous the names that you have come up with really are. The next one you're going to see is, how about Green? Let's have Marjorie Taylor Greene be. She is just as logical as DeSantis.
Well, I'm an independent. I didn't vote for Biden or Trump.
I agree. 100%.
And I didn't vote for Hillary or Trump. So I'm just looking at who I see as the most likely Republicans. Regarding Beto, so you think he's going to be a heavyweight, big figure down the line?
I definitely think he is. And I think he will be governor of Texas. And that's a short step up to the next level. The man has brains. The man has presence. The man has experience. The man has compassion. He has a lot of things that our former president has none of. None of.
What do you think about Beto O'Rourke? I remember when he was giving a speech in a restaurant, and it kind of felt like he didn't have no connection to the people. It felt like just a lot of word salad stuff. I don't know if he would be a good president or not. But I really feel like another thing President Trump did was lower the expectations of all political office. Him versus Hillary, notice how in the debates, they didn't ever have to really bring up policy or any type of commitment of things that they would really do. It was more focused on personal attacks. It was more just overarching themes, less of the solutions on how we get to the details. Kind of like when President Trump was in office and he kept talking about 2 more weeks, his healthcare plan would come out, and then 2 more weeks, and it never came. I feel like that's the expectation for political officials now, that they don't really have to make any promises, just talk overarching, say some things that are very just word salad, and not talk about and use freedom, say American people, say what the American people deserve, but then nothing specific that you can be held to account for. What do y'all think?
Those words would be used to apply to DeSantis or Trump. This is after having lived as long as I have and through as many presidents as I have, to watch a Donald Trump be elected was shameful. He didn't get elected. Hillary Clinton got more of the popular vote than he did. So actually, he didn't get elected. But because of our electoral college, he went into the White House. He didn't belong there. Still doesn't belong there, unless you need a new janitor. But he didn't belong there then, and he doesn't belong there now, and he won't belong there in the future. I have seen too many good presidents to think that this country would do again what happened 2.5 years ago. That was
another thing too. I noticed that over the last few years, maybe the last decade, Congress has continued to give up their power. In my opinion, from a political science perspective, it feels like the 3 branches kind of have merged, and due to people's personal ideologies, the institutional policy which was set up to sort of be like the checks and balances, I sort of feel like the checks and balances are kind of gone based on who's in the particular office. And there's like more loyalty to the person or the people or the organization or the lobbyist that put the selected official in office rather than, the greater good for all Americans. What do you all think about that?
That was insane. 6 years
The
ago, that
American
happened was
people are
insane.
desperate. People are desperate. That's why he got as many votes as he got and has as much support as he had. There was a big article that just came out. 50% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. It has something to do with that, I think.
I don't know. I don't agree with that, because if that had been the reason he got elected, then black and brown women wouldn't have been able to swing the vote in the next election to Joe Biden. They don't have any more money than any of the rest of us do, but they had common sense.
Another thing, like when you look at the political arena, I think elections could be rigged by this sense. The fact that it's the party that picks the front runner. You see what I'm saying? Based on the number of delegates, yada yada. But it's still the party that picks the front runner. Like, I wonder what would the world be like today if the party picked Bernie Sanders over Hillary? When Bernie had more votes than Hillary, but Hillary got more delegates. You get what I'm saying? So that's the interesting part. The party picks the front runner, right? So even if you're a Democrat or you're a Republican and you feel like your candidate, is a better person and you vote that person, the party can say, nah, we're going to go with the other one.
Sense. And they knew that if they didn't do something to put a stop to this man, we were going to be in huge amounts of trouble in this country.
I feel like it's been a continuous progression of things. Jim says, in regards to your congressional question, who was in control during the years you feel they gave up power? I feel like they both work together. It's like two arms on a body or two legs on a body. Because the Democrats do a good job of acting like they resist the policies and all that. But at the end of it, they always sign things like the Patriot Act. I think the war on terror, the Patriot Act, I believe, was a result of that. And these type of legislations that get slipped in there, which take away rights from Americans. And so they put up a good front, like we're against this. But in the end, they still sign on with it. Like in the pandemic, right? Like, okay, Nancy Pelosi said that COVID relief is on pause and the discussions of COVID relief are on pause. Even though, look at the economic situation and inflation, a 40-year high and all that. Nancy Pelosi said any type of economic relief is on pause because people are dying in Ukraine. So this ain't necessarily, I mean, maybe this is answering your question, but maybe it's not just giving up power in a legal way, but also in a way where they act like, where they tell the public there's nothing they can do about it. Like President Joe Biden saying, oh, what we're paying at the pump is Putin's gas price hike. You get what I'm saying? Like creating the perception like, oh, there's nothing we can do about it. Oh, we couldn't stop it. That type of thing.
Is the United States of America. We have been united until Donald Trump, and now he wanted to make us the divided states of America. And he came very close to doing it. And that's part of the mess that Joe Biden has to clean up. He has to bring us back to the United States of America. And it's time for us to start calling this country the United States of America instead of calling.
But have you noticed recently Biden's approval rating is very low right now. It's very low right now, and I think for reasons that we all know, why, and I just don't see the administration doing anything. What I do hear is the White House press secretary and other politicians and Kamala Harris talking about Democrats saying, oh, we understand that people are feeling the pain. And they're talking about feelings, but they're not giving any solutions. And when they give a solution, it's still going to put more, like if they do the gas tax holiday, it's not really going to do much for the prices. You get what I'm saying? Like, I don't hear any substantial movement from the Biden administration on any of the issues in which they ran on. When he said, you ain't black if you don't vote for me, like the George Floyd Police Reform Act still is not passed. We have not seen any legislation or the Department of Justice come out and say anything about the situation with Jalen Walker, where he was shot over 60 times. We haven't seen any progressive agenda when it comes to the actual people, the actual Americans, right? The thing that we did see. So I give credit where credit is due. President Biden signed the anti Asian American hate bill. But other than that, like, really, what has been done thus far? And isn't it interesting that every time it comes to the idea of doing anything for Americans, there's always an idea when the Republicans are fiscally conservative until it comes to people of their state or war or whatever like that, and then the Democrats always pose these actions, but then the Republicans always say, oh, how are we going to pay for it? And so we're like caught in this round robin of situation. But what we do know is what's happening right now is not sustainable. That's what we do know.
Calling it America. That's part of our arrogance that we say this is America. No. These 48 states, contiguous states, Alaska, Hawaii, and the islands off the southeastern coast of the United States of America are the United States of America. We've got to start calling it what it is. We look ignorant every time we call it America.
Well, yeah, I wish he would do that.
Okay, infrastructure bill passed. Okay. And I need to look into that. Like what actually, I guess because COVID relief passed. Okay. But clearly, I wonder, like, it wasn't enough. And is this inflation because, as President Joe Biden stated, like, Americans' savings went up during the pandemic, people were spending less. And was the COVID relief just like alone with the high interest that now this inflation is a reflection of the COVID relief? Like, are we paying that back times 1,000 now with 40-year high inflation? You mean to tell me there's nothing that can be done about this? I just really don't believe that.
Too, I have never seen this country so divided and so riled up. And I'm a lot younger than you. When I grew up, I don't remember it being
Everybody
this
is.
way. Is this kind of the craziest you've seen the political climate?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This makes Richard Nixon's time in office look like the playpen. This is absolutely because of and a man named, what was his name, told us, be careful of television. It will ruin your lives, it will ruin your minds, it will ruin your country. And that's exactly what has happened. We are taking our information off those Palm Pilots and off television. We have become screen addicted to the point where we can't, if we didn't see it on television, we don't believe it. I suspect that fewer people are reading books today than ever have in this country, because you think you can get all you need to know off the screen. Let me tell you, you can't. You can't get all you need to know off the screen, and you can't get all you need to know about history by Googling it. And that's what we're in the process of doing. We're taking.
And I would argue too that the screen time, the one of the effects, I was having a conversation with my friend earlier today. One of the effects of the screen time is this. It's the fact that we're having less conversations with with people, with other humans. If in the scripture, Paul says, I became all things to all men that I might win some to Christ. The television teaches us stereotypes about Muslims or Christians or Black people or Asians. But if I'm going to relate to a human and know another human, I'm going to need to know their culture. And there's a way in which I can have a conversation with someone who's not of my culture or a different culture and figure out what they think about it. But as long as I'm not willing to let my guard down and use my curiosity to have a conversation with someone who's different than me, then, I'm going to remain ignorant. And I'm going to be ignorant based on the narrative that I'm being given. Jim says, people repeat what they hear as if no one can think for themselves anymore. I agree, which is one of the reasons why, I come on here to share my thoughts and beliefs, because guess what? If you introduce some new information to me that I didn't know, I may change my mind. These are my opinions. Everything is a 30-second soundbite. I agree, including, sermons, including church. It's a whole bunch of catchy phrases, but I also think until you have committed to a belief or an idea, you can't move on from it. You remain ignorant. So if you have a wall up to new information that's being that could potentially be introduced to you, then you're going to remain ignorant on that particular thing. Because let's just use this example. If I'm 40 years old, my grandma's 85. There's things my grandma has experienced that I have not experienced, but the world is definitely a different place. My grandma doesn't know how to use a computer. I know how to use a computer. So if we're going to have an exchange of wisdom, she's going to have to be open to the new information that I can give her. And if I want to benefit from the things that she's experienced in life, I'm going to have to be open to the ideas in which she's going to give me. For example, Jane Elliott just said, this is making Nixon's presidency look like nothing. She's saying this is the worst, the political arena has been in her lifetime. Who am I to tell her that no, it's not?
Taking giant steps backward where education is concerned. And if we don't change this, we're in big, big trouble. A man named McLuhan, what was his first name? McLuhan. His last name was McLuhan. He's the one who said, watch out for television. It will ruin your children. It will ruin your minds. And that we're living with, go ahead.
Well, even all the answers to the tests are on the internet. So you don't even have to study for a test anymore.
Yeah, it's really ridiculous. We've reached the ridiculous point. We just read the question, read the answer, put down the answer. Don't read about it to find an answer. Don't read the information. Just get the answer. That's all that's important. Just here are the tests, boys and girls. You find the answers. Yeah, but you don't have to learn anything else. Just the answer to the test. Life is more than the answers to the test.
Well, so I've got one final topic for this discussion here. So we have a problem with mass shootings in America. It's kind of or the United States of America, excuse me.
Thank you.
Where it seems to be an issue that is only pertaining to our country. Why do you think that is, and how do we stop this from happening?
Because manufacturers make a lot of money off of guns. If you want to stop assault rifles from being in the hands of civilians where they do not belong and were never meant to be there, assault rifles are meant to kill human beings. That's what they're manufactured for. Now, if you want to stop people using assault rifles to kill people, all you have to do is make it very expensive to manufacture assault rifles. We need to pass legislation, and I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but think about it. We need to pass legislation that says if an assault rifle is used to kill a person, then the manufacturers of that rifle need to give the survivors, the relatives, the closest relatives of that victim of that rifle, $1 million apiece.
What do you think about that? She said it. She has some interesting ideas. Jim says assault rifles were not meant for the general public. I agree. As an active duty service member, I can agree with that. And I think uh, the mental health crisis is not being addressed, and because it's not being addressed, it affects their second and third order effects, like things that you know are also going untreated. Because I think if we're going to deal with the gun issue, clearly a lot of people who are mass shooters are mentally deranged. I also think Ted Gunderson, I'm going to do a video on him. I keep saying it. Ted Gunderson, who was head of the FBI, he brought out the fact that law enforcement now um, doesn't talk about the satanic influences, like the satanic materials that they find on some of these mass shooters. And he said that law enforcement is instructed not to tell the public that. And I don't know if you ever heard the term, I'm sure Jim has, satanic panic. But I think the fact that they're not showing these things, but you can find them, the different things that people post on Instagram, there's satanic influence in these type of things. Like, you can't kill and murder people and be happy about it unless you are mentally ill, and I would argue spiritually ill too. So if we're going to deal with the mass shooting crisis, I think we also need to deal with the mental health crisis, and there should be a mental health check. But see, guess what? Maybe the reason why we don't do that is because everything in America is so expensive. Like, healthcare is very expensive. If we had Medicare for all, it would be so much easier. We would save a lot more money. Also, there was a study that showed over 300,000 people, 300,000 lives would have been saved if we had Medicare for all. Medicare for all is cheaper than our current system. We would spend less money on healthcare, and less Americans would go bankrupt for healthcare costs. Jim says, I have concern with her first comment that they should be priced so people can't get them, but that will not keep them out of the hands of people who should never have them. I agree. I don't know what the solution is, but I guarantee you the solution is not to do nothing, which is largely what's happening right now. I think sometimes, without creating new laws, it should be just about enforcing the laws that we have. But I do believe there should be a mental health check, and maybe a waiting period, 3 days, something like that. But on the other hand, in other areas, I think that you should be able to carry concealed wherever. Because let's face it, where we see the most gun crime, it's in the most strict places. How do I say that? The strictest places where they have gun laws. You get what I'm saying? So gun laws ain't protecting people. So I think there should be less restriction in that way. If you pass the mental health check and all that, you should be able to carry concealed wherever. I think off-duty military should be able to carry concealed. I think any person who knows how to use a gun should be carrying. Because nowadays, we already see that it's not necessarily just for you, but it could be that you're protecting somebody else.
Now, how many assault rifles, do you think would get sold to civilians if the manufacturers had to think about that? It's all about money in this country. It's all about money. We have assault rifles because people will pay a lot of money for an assault rifle. Manufacturers make a lot of money on bullets and on guns. Find out what gun was used to kill somebody, and then make the manufacturer of that gun responsible for what happened when that gun was used to kill somebody. There's no reason not to use it to kill somebody right now. You don't have to go to jail. We can call you mentally ill. No, it isn't. Mental illness isn't the reason for all these killings. The ability to get a rifle that will kill as fast as an assault rifle will is the reason we have these mass shootings. We could put a stop to this, and the gangs that are shooting one another That's their problem. Let them go someplace and shoot one another. But they won't have that opportunity if it's expensive, if it becomes less money making for the manufacturer.
What I think is interesting, I did a video where I talked about how the FBI knew about the Tops Market shooter, Peyton Gendron. When you look at the gear that he had, also the gear that the Uvalde shooter had, it is interesting that at 18, 19 years old, they had the amount of money to purchase that gear, from body armor to the AR-15 to the amount of rounds they had, like over 300. Like, I do find that part pretty interesting. Do you? Like, have you looked into the gear and how much it costs? Because I did. And it was kind of, I had also ran across a TikTok video or a YouTube short where a particular person was talking about how much the gear costs, and it was over like 10 grand. So how did the 18-year-old get 10 grand to get their hands on all this equipment? I do find that interesting.
Manufacturers to sell those guns. That's the reason those guns are out there. We don't need those unless you're in the military, and nobody should have them unless they're in the military. There is absolutely no, oh Lord, they described on television one day this week what a bullet out of an assault rifle does to a body once it enters your body. It explodes and destroys your innards. These were 9-year-old kids. Every one of their parents should be, they should get money from the manufacturers of that rifle, because you can't replace those kids. You can't pay those parents enough to want their children to be dead. Their children are dead, and they are dead because the manufacturers of those rifles let those rifles be sold indiscriminately. No 18-year-old has any business with an assault rifle unless he is in the military. This is ridiculous. It has to be stopped.
Well, there's no practical use for an assault rifle.
No, but the people in Congress are getting paid by the people who manufacture those rifles not to write legislation that will make it more difficult for those rifles to be sold.
So I got a question. Do you think the gun manufacturers should pay for the damage done by the mass shooters to the victims' families? When I look at the Uvalde situation, I think the gun manufacturers should have to pay. I think the police department should have to pay. I think the city should have to pay. I think the state should have to pay, because clearly all of these agencies that these parents pay taxes to, they failed them. So in that situation, I agree with that. Jim says, we had a ban on assault rifles and it twilighted, and that's when the mass shooting started. I agree. So I agree with that. Jim says, yes, I agree with that too.
When they make it more difficult for those rifles to be sold, but you can't just write a law that says we mustn't have these rifles. No, what you have to do is write legislation that says it's going to cost the manufacturers, every time somebody is killed with one of these guns, the manufacturers are going to have to pay the survivors of that killing, period.
Well, I heard we had one in Tennessee, another situation like this in Tennessee, but in the Texas tragedy, the police failed us. So what should happen to them, where they refuse to go in and
they obviously don't want to protect and defend, so they should go and do another job. They should be fired.
So I feel that with all the information that has come out, I think that there's no other way to paint the picture. And I don't feel comfortable doing this. It's not like I want to. I'm not against the police. I do think police brutality is a large issue for America. But after all the information came out about the Uvalde shooting, I, without a doubt, believe they allowed it to happen, almost wanted it to happen. The cover up, the way they hired a law firm to protect the police and stop information from coming out, the fact that they reported 8 police officers were already in the school, the fact that other police officers went and got their kids out, It is. I think the wild card was the Border Patrol agent who ran in there after I think they told him not to. Remember, they tried to blame a teacher for leaving the door open. Then they said the shooter was barricaded. Then they came out and said the shooter was not barricaded, and they didn't even check the door. So with all of the situations that have come out, it feels like the Uvalde shooting, and I think the parents feel this, and they wouldn't even let the parents go in. They put the parents in handcuffs and wanted to tase them and all that. And then the police are harassing the woman who went in to save her children. To me, like, this is insane, and I don't think there's no other way you can say it other than they wanted that mass shooter to happen. Oh, I also forgot the police engaged with the shooter before he ran in the school. I don't want to be saying these things, but these are the facts. Jim says, hey, Brandon, it's been great listening to you. Good to see you again. I need to get going. Thank you for joining the show, Jim. Yep. Thank you for liking. Thank you for joining the show. Thank you for participating. Oh, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Immediately. Absolutely. They should be fired. If the police would say to the man next door who went running over there with a gun to put a stop to that, and they said to him, get the F out of the way, shut your effing mouth and get away from here. That was bad policing. That was bad citizenship. That was absolutely unacceptable behavior. And for them to stand in the hall for an hour and wait for the directions to go in and do something about that while 19 little kids were being shot and killed, this is unacceptable behavior, and they've got no business being in the police force any longer. They are not they have decided at that point that they weren't going to be police, they were going to be bystanders. You don't have to pay people to be bystanders.
Yeah, I found that element.
And it was interesting to find out the city budget for Uvalde. Like, I think it was like 40% or 60% goes to police. And even, in America, a lot of police departments got old military gear. So they had all the gear. And then they said they were waiting for more gear. But it's just insane to me. One shooter stopped all those cops from going in and saving children. They should not only be cops, but I feel like every police officer who was there that day who did not go inside, whose duty was to go inside, should be charged. They should be charged with murder. I believe they should be charged with murder or an accessory to murder, something like that, because it's their duty. That's what they get paid to do. If police have a dangerous job, yes, but guess what? That's what they signed up to do. That's who American citizens call when they're in trouble. That's who they take an oath to protect and serve the community. So if you didn't protect and serve the community, with all the proof in this situation, I believe they should be charged as an accessory to murder or something equivalent. What do you think?
To be a particularly disturbing part of this, where you think the police are supposed to protect us.
I hope that eventually we'll know three things. Absolutely. Number one, without blacks, you wouldn't have whites. Blacks were here first. The only reason we have whites is because black people faded. Without blacks, there would be no whites. So get over that one. Get over racism. It's ridiculous. Without Jews, there would be no Christians and no.
This is a picture of Jane Elliott right here. And this is looks like I think she taught second or third grade, and she would do the blue eye, brown eye experiment with her children. And I remember she went on Oprah, and people tried to say it was too controversial. But yeah. And then I think 17 years later or something like that, when they were all adults, she had them all come back, and that reunion is on YouTube as well. I had found it on YouTube.
Muslims. The Christian faith and the Muslim faith both take words out of the Jewish faith. So get over that anti-Semitism, people. We depended on them for our very faith. And here's a really hard one. Without women, there would be no men. So get over the idea that we are the weaker sex, and get over the idea that we need to be barefoot and pregnant and go back into the home and do nothing but cook and clean and smile a lot.
The idea about that too, women going back into the home to cook and clean. Most Americans need dual incomes to afford a living, and even when they have dual income and both parents are working, think about how much childcare is. Nothing's being done about that. Housing prices going up, rent prices going up, inflation at 40-year high. Isn't it kind of disrespectful that the SCOTUS would overturn abortion right about now? Especially when that's not even the hot topic. It's a hot topic because it's an emotional topic and they've made it one, but that's not even the most important thing going on in America right now. And it's just very hypocritical and disrespectful that that's what the SCOTUS is doing right now. But this was their agenda from the beginning. But the lack of action to ease the economic instability of American citizens, the American working class, as they like to say, is kind of really disrespectful for them to be out here asking for somebody to vote for them, but they're not doing anything to ease the life of an American who's working 40 hours a week. Some people working 2 jobs. Hell, and most people probably working more than 40 hours a week. It's probably at least 50 or more. So for the SCOTUS to be focused on abortion and to take us backwards, and for us to call ourselves land of the free, home of the brave, I just think that's very interesting. Very interesting.
Most women have greater experiences and knowledge, and particularly women of color, than most pale males do. That's just a fact. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. They have been around they've been around much longer than I have, and I'm always astounded when somebody calls me and asks me anything about race, anything about abortion, any of those topics, because there are women of color out there who know more about these things than I will ever learn, because they've had to know more. They are forced to know more than I have to know, and they are the ones you should be talking to. You should be asking questions of women of color, because they know they know. They were here first and they will be here last. We'd better start to appreciate them and enjoy them and really be extremely, extremely appreciative of what they are and what they've done and what they've been willing to do. We aren't. But at least we're over the Marilyn Monroe types. At least we aren't doing that on a daily basis. We're making progress. But until somebody other than so-called white males.
We're making progress. And do you think that's why these ideas are being introduced? Do you think that's why we're going backwards on women's rights, because we've made progress? And do you think the progress that we've made is being threatened?
Run the show, we'll still be looking at white females as being the ones. We shouldn't be doing that. We need to realize how brilliant these black and brown women are. But we don't, there's no reason in the world for anyone to ask me questions about race, as long as there are as many brilliant black and brown women as there are out there.
Well, your voice can reach people, though.
Sure, because it comes out of a white skin. See, that's what it really irritates me. It just drives me, makes me furious. I don't have to be furious about it now, because my name is on the list of banned authors and speakers, so I'm not working much anymore. So evidently my voice does have some kind of effect on people. It evidently really bothers the Republicans, and I understand that. But if I had done the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise in my classroom in 1968, the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, as a black woman, would I have kept my job?
Well, would anyone have covered it?
would I have lived through it? Make no
Right.
mistake about this. I know exactly why people listen to me, because I'm non-threatening, because I'm white. And they don't have to say, I heard this from this black woman. Black women were saying these things before I was born. And you still aren't listening to them. You're still listening to me, and you ought to be listening to black women, because they know the truth, and they know that they know the game. They know how to play the game. And they will. I have nothing but tremendous admiration for practically every black woman that I've known and that I've worked with. And I have worked with some absolutely brilliant black women who were, when they were 15, they knew more than I know at 88, because they had no choice. Take advantage of that of that knowledge and that experience and that background, instead of some old white woman who isn't really white. She just shades of gray, faded black.
Well, my thanks to Jane Elliott, you know, a legendary educator. Go and get her book, A Collar in My Pocket. Her
Wait a
website.
minute. Wait a minute.
Yes.
Wait a minute. Don't call me a legend, okay? Because if you break that word up, it becomes leg end. And at one end of a leg is a heel. At the other end of a leg is a hip. I don't want to be a leg end. So do not call me a legend. I am not a legend. I'm a person who was lucky enough to copy Adolf Hitler's behaviors the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. I didn't invent that exercise. I learned it from Adolf Hitler. One of the ways they decided who would.
Wow. She learned it from Adolf Hitler? Wow. So guess what? What I see that being is there's an ability to take what is meant for evil and turn it around as an experiment for good.
Into the gas chamber was eye color. If you had a German name and blue eyes, you were okay. If you had a brown eyes, they threw you into the gas chamber because they thought you were, obviously, you're not one of us. I'm not a member of the Aryan race. There is no such thing. I'm not a member of the white race. There is no such thing. I'm a member of the human race. And so are you. And so is every person who is still silly enough to still be listening to this. We're all members of the same race. We've got to get over this. And I'm not a legend. Legends are dead. I'm not dead.
Jane Elliott, very popular educator. Okay. Go and check out her website, link down in the video description. That's where you can find her list of reading materials and other stuff. So go and check that out. Thank you for joining us, everyone. And
So what did you think about that? I think Jane Elliott has been doing it for a long time. I think that does say something, that she is a white woman who does speak this way. And because of it, she has experienced many death threats. But I think, we need voices of truth in the culture. And I do need to change my camera battery real quick, because I guess I just exhausted it. So I shall do that right now. But in continuing, I wanted to continue to speak about the birth dearth. This is an article from August 4th, 1987. And it says, somewhere toward the end of the birth dearth, there's a cartoon of a woman running her hand through her hair, mournfully announcing, "I can't believe it. I forgot to have children." This absent-minded woman, this white middle-class educated American of childbearing age, is the primary culprit of Ben Wattenberger's new book. This is in 1984. She's the woman who left the six-pack of children. One second, changing my battery. She's the woman who left the six-pack of children off her life shopping list until it was too late. Women like her, women who have less than their share of children are not just involved in personal dramas. They are, in his view, responsible for the impending population decline and political fall of the entire Western world. This does seem a lot to me like the idea of replacement theory, because doesn't that seem fear-based? It seems fear-based. And I almost have my camera back up, y'all. Thank you for tuning in and allowing me to do this. So, okay, I think I got my camera back up now. Wattenberg is a demographer for the neoconservative American Enterprise Institute and no slouch in the pop sociology division. He builds his thesis on indisputable fact, on one indisputable fact. Today, with little warning, the total fertility rate of American women has dropped to 1.8, slightly below replacement level. See, so the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because Fox News is on TV all the time talking about this replacement theory. It is what motivates them, and I think which connects, racism to the entire discussion about abortion. Okay. There we go. Got the camera back. Okay. This may come as a surprise to those still thinking about the baby boom echo and population explosion. Two sorts of American birth stories usually make the news. One bemoans the fact that unprepared teenagers are having babies, and the other details how educated, if forgetful, women are belatedly seeking babies through egg donors and surrogate mothers. Somewhere in between is the Wattenberg Proclamation. Let it be noted, the birth dearth is due to low fertility among the middle and upper middle class. In fairness, the author and father of four, 3 from his first marriage, 1 from his second, understands that people do not consult national fertility rates when making private decisions about children. He has a pretty accurate picture of the economic reasons we are having fewer children than before. I think it's economic reasons too. So maybe if we were focusing on that, we wouldn't have to even be thinking about overturning Roe v. Wade and all this other stuff. The couples involved often care about whether the wife needs to work or wants to work, he writes. And just like I said earlier, I think we know like most homes need both people working. They need the woman working in order to afford houses, cars, the American dream. Whether their dwelling is large enough for a child or more children, whether they will have the money to send their child or children to good schools, whether they will be able to keep up their standard of living. Millions of private decisions, nevertheless, add up to a trend that he considers quite bleak. Some of the items on his list of dire consequences are reasonable concerns. We may have fewer young Americans to support the Social Security of our elders or to consume the products of our manufacturers. Others seem a bit peculiar. Will an older and smaller population really become dispirited? Is it so terrible if a shrinking pool of taxpayers can no longer support the defense systems, which are the basis of national power and security? Maybe there would be less war. Wouldn't that be good? Uh-oh, what did I do? Okay. Wattenberg has written just the first salvo of concern about this ungrowth, and some of his freewheeling points make me more than a little wary. For one thing, he comes perilously close to suggesting that the right, i.e. the white sort of people, aren't having enough children. And he outright says that it's women who hold the fate of the Western world in their hands, or more precisely, in their wombs. So let me ask you, do you think any of the decisions of the Supreme Court have anything to do with the birth dearth? I'm feeling like the replacement theory and all this is exactly that. Let me fix my camera. There we go. That's much better. I hear all sorts of echoes in these messages. In the early 20th century, when American women first started on the path of higher education and lower fertility, there was a similar national concern about something called racial suicide. Dang. The concern in those days was that Americans of Northwest European stock would be overrun by teeming masses arriving from such dubious genetic pools as Italy, Russia, Greece. Are we about to rerun this mix of subtle racism and subtler chauvinism? Wattenberg supports all sorts of programs that I toast: daycare, parental leave, flex time, job sharing, community-minded housing. They can make it much easier for families to have both work and children so that we don't have to choose one or forget the other. But he slips easily back into a traditional vernacular, women as exclusive child raiser, when proposing to redistribute income from those who don't have children to those women who would stay home and have more than two. Finally, this demographer missed some powerful emotional reasons why Americans are having fewer children. I want to remind you this article is from the Washington Post in 1984. We see parenting as much more complex, psychologically significant, and demanding role than our grandparents did. We are more anxious to do this job well. We are not sure if we can fairly distribute ourselves, not just our income, but ourselves, our attention, and energy. And I have friends who have 3 or more children, and they say it can be pretty difficult at times. Over 3, 4, or more children. Is there a birth dearth? The real culprit is the time dearth. What do you think about that? I think so as well. Time and it that just made me think about. I relate a lot of things to movies. That just made me think about the movie with Justin Timberlake called Time. Do y'all remember that? Where basically if you ran out of time, you were dead. I mean, as terrible as that sounds, like you had to work to buy time. And if you ran out of time on the clock, you died. And it almost feels like it's sort of a reality in a weird type of way when it comes to people being able to afford the things of life. Let's look at one more article. And I thank you for enjoying the stream, and I thank you for enjoying the conversation and joining the conversation, commenting, like, sharing, and subscribing. So let's go here to Forbes. This article is entitled, "The New Census Numbers Confirm the Birth Dearth is Real." Okay, so they're saying it's real. Let's check it out. The release of the first numbers from the 2020 census seemed to tell us pretty much what everyone suspected. The U.S. population is in danger of leveling off, the result of fewer births and less legal immigration. And anyone who thought a pandemic anyone who thought a pandemic when we were all stuck at home would result in a surge in new babies being born turns out to have been woefully misinformed. Turns out we'd all rather watch Netflix and bake bread. In this update on an earlier Forbes.com story, this news data shows that the declining birth rate is going to mean big problems for lots of companies, from McDonald's to Kimberly-Clark to Hasbro and Mattel to all the companies making baby food and formula that rely on a steady stream of newborn customers every year. So now they're talking about the economic effects of not having enough babies. Initial estimates based on a study by 2 university economics professors, as reported in a Wall Street Journal article, projected that overall births would drop about 8% versus projections without COVID. That would result in 300,000 fewer births for the year, taking the already low 2019 number of 3.5 million down to 3.2 million births. By point of comparison, in 2007, the peak year for births, surpassing even the baby boom era, it was 4.3 million. Doing the math, it means the number of births in the US will have declined about 25% over the past 14 years. With big increases in the overall population of the country, the birth rate and new additions to the overall population of the country will show even larger percentage declines. The reasons for the COVID birth dearth are both obvious and subtle. Certainly, the lack of social interaction has to be the leading factor, with fewer new relationships getting started that might have resulted in new families, or at least new arrivals. But there's also the psychological aspect, as couples feeling both financially and emotionally stressed were choosing to postpone having babies and perhaps deciding not to have them at all. I can agree with this. And so that's why I feel like if we're going to think about overturning Roe v. Wade to increase the birth rate or stop the birth rate, why are we not doing anything? If we want abortions to go down, why not do anything about the economic situation that children are born into? Putting it all together and the impact on the country and many of the country's business sectors are enormous. Companies that make infant and children products like diapers, clothing, baby food, juvenile furniture, strollers, and of course, toys would be the most obvious ones to suffer. Even versus 2 years ago, they are looking at a customer base that will be anywhere from 8 to 12% smaller in 2021 than 2 years ago. But the baby bust will play out over a much larger base. Fast food chains that were built on young family business will have far fewer customers. Daycare centers, children's activity providers, and even babysitters will all see dramatic declines in their demand. To say nothing of public and private schools, which just won't need as many teachers or classrooms. And the hospital and healthcare sector will only find some relief in a cruel twist of fate by the demand created by the pandemic itself for services and treatment. Which, remember, in the pandemic, a lot of routine health was put on pause. This population dip will play out, in fact, over decades as this COVID generation moves up through the demographic pipeline, impacting fashion, home, travel, and virtually every industry sector. Isn't this making sense now? Why Professor, hold up, I want to be bigger when I say this. Isn't this making sense now why Professor Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum wrote the book COVID-19, The Great Reset? Doesn't this sound like COVID has reset the entire economy? If we're experiencing 40-year high inflation, doesn't that seem like a reset? Don't they say like these are market corrections and use that type of terminology? I think so. I think it's pretty interesting. If this is a short-term issue, and those 2020 births are indeed only postponed and not completely eliminated, we could see a post-COVID bump in 2022 and 2023. But as no births, that's interesting. But as no births have a certain physical window to occur and cannot be indefinitely postponed. And even if rates pick up again, they cannot be expected to get back to anywhere near the higher historical rates of the first decade of this century. Never before in American history, not during wars, not during the last pandemic of the 1918-1919 Spanish flu, and not when the economy went into severe downturns, has the term pregnant pause ever been so literally true. So that's all we have there. So what do you think about all of this? Let me know in the comments. I really do appreciate your support. Thank you for your viewership. We got over a few thousand views, and we met a milestone of over 2,500 views in a short amount of time. And I think this is about my 5th or 6th stream. If there's any shows that you would like me to do, one of my easiest emails is bodybybrandonallen@gmail.com. You can email me there. You can comment if there's a show that you would like to do. If you want to come on the stream and have a discussion with me, I would love that. Let's get that scheduled. I am in Hawaii, so there's a time difference, if you're on the East or West Coast. Yeah, thank you for joining the stream. I hope you got something out of it. Jane Elliott is a great human who's dedicated majority of her life to being a anti-racist and an educator of uncomfortable truths that I think we all need to hear. I will leave you with this. I think there is one race, the human race, and the more that we talk about our commonalities, the better our world will be. We can make a change in our community. We can make a change in our workplace. And I challenge you to do that. Know that I'm praying for you. I love you all. Thank you for supporting me. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye. Good evening. Good night.